In my last video, I asked the question of why do we undervalue the subjective? In this one, I'm really going to turn it around and say why is it we overvalue the objective? After all, both subjective and objective experiences are all just mapped inside the brain, by the brain. But those ones we call objective are sort of projected out onto a screen so that other people can see them and, we hope, agree with what they see as what we see, and then it's called objective. That raises the question of how many people does it need to establish something as an objective fact? Well, in theory, just one person agreeing with you means it must be out there, it must be objective. But in fact, people allow for delusion or the human tendency to be persuasive. And they would say, no, it needs several people to verify it before we could actually say that's objective fact. And I'll be asking, what is that number? In the last thing, I showed a diagram which suggested that there's a pressure by society to objectify our subjective experiences. If you simply go in and explore them or do magic or meditate on everything, you don't get much credit for that. But if you objectify it by either going the scientific way and finding an explanation or some new theory to cover it, then society respects that. Or going to the artistic direction, if you decide to express it, making a movie, an opera, a pop song, or writing a book about it, again, society respects that. Whereas if you just go in and only explore, no credit really. So take the example of explaining. You have this passionate inner feeling and you're suffering from it. And so you decide to go the route of explaining it. Study psychology, study neuroscience or the chemicals in the body or Jungian psychology to find out why you are suffering these things. And you will write a thesis about it, you'll get a degree on it, you'll write a book about it, you may even become famous as a theorist of that. Now, one point I want to make out is all that takes a lot of work. And funnily enough, the work, a lot of it is actually subjective inner exploring. You're supposed to be looking at other theories and experimenting and all that sort of thing, but you inevitably will be looking back at your own experience that set you on that path. You read about, say, the Jungian idea of the anima, and you think, was I projecting my anima? Well, yes, I think so, if I remember. So a lot of that work is actually the subjective exploring. But does that get credited? No. If when you wrote your thesis, you put in phrases like, I was so excited by the result, or I was really upset that I didn't seem to fit Jungian's model, and so on and so forth, none of that would be accepted. It all has to be put as objective statements about facts and quotations from recognized authorities on the subject, put together from that. No mention of your huge subjective involvement in the whole thing. And then it'll be accepted. So how many people does it take to become an objective fact? Well, I should think in the case of academia, probably 1,000 or a few thousand experts all saying this is a breakthrough would make it accepted as objective fact. Now, in the case of academia, I should qualify that because, of course, academia and science say, oh, there's no such thing as a total truth. Everything is open to, we are open-minded about other possibilities. But in fact, they aren't like that really. Once a thing has been accepted as a true scientific fact, anyone who's going to try to dislodge that with a new theory is going to have to work incredibly hard. It could be a lifetime's job and you could still fail. So basically, a few 100,000 academics, and it becomes an established fact, objectified. And a lot of that work that's gone into it and the time it's taken has actually been internal work. Now, expressing also takes a lot of time. I mean, even with the advances of modern desktop publishing and print on demand, going from your passionate inner feeling to writing the masterpiece book about it still could take months or years. And again, a lot of that work will actually be back to exploring inside yourself. You know, you're writing about the moment when the hero reaches out his hand to shake it off at the woman he adores, and she coldly turns her back on him. And you're thinking, how did I feel when that sort of thing? Oh, yes, that's it. And you're putting all that work and all the thing into your novel. But again, do you get praise for that? Will you win the Booker Prize because of the work you did on the novel? No, it'll be the novel itself. All that inner work is just forgotten about. And how many people does this take? Well, I don't know. I think that when you reach 100,000 or a couple of 100,000 sales, I think you're on the way to being a bestseller, and a few good comments from critics, things like that. So that's the sort of numbers required to establish what was once your inner feeling and your torment out into a masterpiece, a piece of work of art. And in both cases, it takes a long time, say, months, years of work. Now, is it possible to speed that up, to get that objective verification faster than that? Well, in the last century, Hitler found he could do that. As a dictator who has complete control over the media, even his craziest ideas could become accepted as true by a vast part of the population in just a few weeks, just as Putin has done. He has the idea that actually all Ukrainians are actually Russians, but if we kill enough of them, they will accept the fact that they're Russians. And in a few weeks, a large proportion of Russian population is agreeing with him. It's become objective fact, as far as they're concerned. Now, so it can be done quicker, but something has happened in recent years to completely change the balance there. Go back to the angry man, raging with unrequited love. He has a sleepless night and he wakes up and he's tossing and turning, and he gets out his phone and he taps in a tweet, "All women are bitches." And he's so relieved he falls asleep. And the next morning he wakes up and it's gone viral and he's got 1 million likes. Now, if it takes a couple of thousand academics to verify something is objectively real, or a few 100,000 books sold to make it an objective masterpiece, what about 1 million likes in one day? It's absolute proof that it's objectively true, isn't it? Can't deny that. Except it's likely to also have got a similar number of people who dislike it. But that isn't a problem, because, as we know from academic acceptance, anyone who denies what is proven to be an objective fact is an idiot. Anyone who denies that this great work of art is good is a Philistine. So anyone who disagrees with this proven objective fact that all women are bitches, we've got names of them. They're crazy, they're stupid, they're ignorant, they're just being obstinate. And so, with that one phrase, this huge portion of society has been split into two opposing camps. One totally agrees with it, and the other doesn't agree, but we know that they're stupid, they're just ignorant, they're being obstinate, that sort of thing. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I think it's a pity that artificial intelligence, if it's that good, why isn't it put into the interface with social media? So that when he's in the middle of the night, he types in his angry phrase about women being bitches. The interface says, really? I mean, what about Mother Teresa? What about Florence Nightingale? What about your mother? Is that always true? And it's the beginning of an argument that takes place with the social media AI. It's doing actually the job that the editor would do with your thesis or with your book you're going to get published. And it's querying what you're saying, and it's changing what you're going to be allowed to tweet. And you may end up with something like, after half an hour, that angry men can be a real pain in the arse. And some women respond to that by behaving like absolute bitches. And okay, you can publish that, and so that goes out as a tweet. But it isn't quite the loaded gun of the original statement he wanted to put in, is it? And I think the world would be all the better for that. But of course we know that the nature of the business model that drives these social media is such that they wouldn't want to do that because there's money in anger and fear. So what could the individual do who's in that position, feeling this powerful inner feeling that is crying out to be expressed and objectified? I would say, play down the importance of objective verification. Value the subjective experience you're having. Explore it. Do some magic. Draw up your horoscope to see what it tells you about, what you're feeling and your reaction to it. Do a tarot reading. Do a ritual. Light a candle. Burn some incense. Talk to the moon. Or just meditate on it. Do some of that inner work which you won't get credit for, but is actually good for you, and it prepares you for something much better than just pure objective admiration. Do more magic and forget about the importance of only thing that matters is if it's objective.